What is up, Watch fam? I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and welcome to Ask T&H. Today I'm going to be basically writing a love letter to one of my favorite brands of all time, Cartier. But before we do, a quick wristwatch check, and very kind of appropriate for today's episode, a Cartier Santos Dumont. I absolutely love this watch. This is one of the first, this is the second watch I ever bought for myself. Actually, the second and most recent watch I've bought for myself. And this is, to me, just an absolutely amazing piece. I dove into, its kind of detail a little bit in Monday's episode of Rant T&H. But to me, one of the most beautiful elements here is the case finishing. I mean, it really, really is just immaculate. There are bevels. I mean, there's just one, two, three. I mean, three different kind of styles of finishing here, and they're all very close to each other, and they make these sharp edges. I mean, this watch to me is really a masterpiece. But let's get into today's episode, and I'm sure this watch will come in handy in a little bit. Okay, so I'm often asked, why are you so passionate about Cartier? Right? And further, why don't you sell them? So if you're so passionate, well, why are you so passionate? And then if you are, why don't you sell them? So I'll answer all these questions, and I get this quite a lot, mind you, because I am a very public advocate for the brand. So not that they pay me, because they don't. But let's kind of get into it. Why am I passionate for Cartier? Because of their core design values. That's that simple. I think that they have made a mess of some of their values. There's no question. I think that Cartier has made some awful mistakes. I think that they've made some mistakes that give people the right to hate them and the reason to say, oh God, it's one of those again. There's no question. I don't doubt that at all. But still, what I know they're capable of and what I know is at the bedrock of their company is just something that I'm so passionate about. I mean, their design, really. I love their values. So what is their value? What does Cartier mean to me? Cartier to me means, obviously, at the time, mechanical movements. Manually wound mechanical movements, which I'm obviously an enormous fan of. Being a vintage watch geek, I don't come across automatic all that often. I mean, I do in Rolexes and Tudors, but that's just about it. I am a manually wound kind of guy. I love the feeling of waking up in the morning and doing that. I love doing it throughout the day when I'm bored. To me, it's a very romantic idea that I power a watch that someday, my child could power. I think it's just a really, really interesting, feeling. So that's number one. I mean, and that's with all vintage watches. That's not just with Cartier. But further, I love their usage of precious metals. And of course, they're not the only brand to use precious metals. I mean, almost every expensive or even sometimes mid-tier brands, use gold, and they use platinum, and they use white gold. There's no question. But right now, so we're starting with the first two kind of ideas that go along with Cartier. It's manually wound and precious metal. So already, if you know my style, you know that I'm already, quite into it. Third, once they have their manually wound precious metal watch, their designs all seem like they're in the same family. I mean, everything looks like it's related, from the Tank Opus to the Chinois, to the Normal, to the Cintre, to the Santos Dumont, to the American. I mean, the Louis, the Tank Solo, the Jump Hour Guichet. I mean, all of these watches make sense together. If you look at a Cartier watch, there is no question. I mean, a classic Cartier watch. There is no question that it is Cartier. You can take the name right off the dial. In fact, Anna put a photo of this watch without a Cartier, sign on it, stamp on it, and you know exactly what it is. There is no question. I think that that's an amazing, thing. There are so many other, watches out there, like Vacheron and Patek, who have made amazing dress watches, manually wound, precious metal, no question. But although Patek has their Calatrava and Vacheron Constantin has some of their teardrop lug model. These brands have wonderful designs, there's no question. But the family of the Calatrava to me is not very interesting. I mean, yes, you have great references. You have the 96, you have the 570. I mean, these are great watches, no question, but they just seem like further evolutions of the same watch. And that's wonderful. I mean, that's just the next generation and the next generation. And I respect that and I love it. But to me, you can't compare, the thought that went into building the Cartier line and the thought that went into building the Calatrava. That's a bold statement, and I don't mean it to offend any Calatrava lovers. I love the Calatrava. To me, the 570 is one of, the most amazing, watches ever. The size is incredible, the dial's incredible, and their modern reissue of it is beautiful. I'd wear it in a second. I don't remember the reference. In my opinion, you cannot compare the Patek dress, line. Basically, all Pateks were dress, and the Cartier, because the Patek could almost be, if you weren't a geek, totally confused for a Vacheron. I mean, or a Jaeger-LeCoultre in so many cases. So to me, that it doesn't, that kind of loses it. I love looking at a crash and knowing, of course, it's the same thing or the same family as a Tank Louis or a Santos Dumont. But if you look at a Santos Dumont and you look at a crash, they couldn't be more different. They couldn't be. But still, they're so interesting. And then now, of course, the natural reaction to my statement here would be, yes, well, that's just a white dial with Roman numerals and blued steel hands. Is that what you're talking about? That all their watches have the same thing? Yes, that's absolutely part of it, no question. And their dials, although iconic, are not my favorite parts of their watches because they are all relatively the same. To me, the most amazing part it's the cases. The crash and then the Bangalore and the Chinois and everything, it all looks like it came from the same refined mind. It looks like the same person made them all. And I love that. It almost seems like there was just this designer that was immortal and then just kept designing watches and kept expressing himself in a different way. It's very, very artistic. It's not so much about watchmaking as it is about art. And I love that. I think it's just so interesting. So yes, I love this idea of the Cartier core values. Mechanical, often manually wound watches in precious metals with cases that, although radically different, are so incredibly similar and within the same family. And dials that really hold the entire foundation together. They pull everything together in really wonderful harmony. I love this idea that if you love one vintage Cartier, you probably love them all. So these watches just do speak to me. Now, of course, I totally admit it. Cartier has fucked up. There is no question. Like now, all of a sudden, like evil Christian comes out and admits that, how does the Pasha make any sense? I think the Calibre de Cartier is a great watch. I like it. Big fan. Doesn't make any sense. I don't think that it goes along with the evolution of Cartier by any means. And I think that my distaste for both the Calibre and the Pasha show that it's not about the quality of the watch, because the Pashas were fine, they were fine, whatever, and the Calibres are wonderful watches. It's not about that. To me, it's about these core values and sticking to what the brand means, because it's what made the brand important. The fact that Cartier was Cartier with core values, that's what people cared about. That's why Andy Warhol wore one. That's why Muhammad Ali, the opposite guy that you would ever think would wear a vintage Tank or a vintage Tank. Because the brand was so intoxicating, because their messaging was so clear and refined. That's why, because it was so Jay Gatsby of southern France. But when they fuck around with this and they make it a Calibre and they make the Pasha and they make so many other of their models, to me it just gets all diluted. And I hate that. So yes, I admit that you have full right to hate the brand that I love. Full right. Even if you were wrong, you still have full right. But I think that you have plenty of reason to hate them. But I'm also very right for loving them. And I think that it's very hard to, even if it's not your style, even if dress watches aren't your style, I think it's very difficult to not appreciate this idea of an old world company truly staying within very confined spaces. Precious metal dress watches with mechanical, often manually wound movements, white dials, and black Roman numerals. That is the Cartier kind of signature. And I think owning that shows an incredible amount of confidence in your own brand. And that's an incredible reason to love Cartier. Now a little advice for Cartier, and this is very egotistic, this is very what I want to see, but I can also tell you what it'll give them. In 1945, Rolex introduced the Jubilee bracelet. And the Jubilee bracelet has obviously become one of the most recognizable hallmarks of the Rolex brand. And really very, very few brands have done the same since. Introduce a new bracelet, put it on the same watches, and have that bracelet become, a legend in and of itself. And I would love to see Cartier reintroduce it. They would be reintroduction, they'd be reissues, or even original bracelets for some of their watches. I don't think that the bracelets on the Tank Solo, for example, fit. They don't make any sense to me. They're far too oyster. They're far too water resistant than they should be. I think that they need to be a little bit more dainty and delicate. I think they're supposed to be. And even if Cartier just did, limited runs, boutique editions of a mesh bracelets or of Milanese bracelets, of beads of rice bracelets, of brick bracelets, I think that the watch community, at least us, maybe not the mass market, but the watch community, would restore its faith and confidence in Cartier. I have no problem with them selling other things. I have no problem with that. Selling the Calibre and selling, whatever other watches they want to, that's fine. But I really want to be, as a very passionate Cartier fan, reminded that the golden days aren't over. That they recognize that, yes, we have a large selection for our future in the mass market, but core audience, we love you guys. And you are the people that have made us so successful. And I think that introducing some of those bracelets and putting them on Tank Luis and Tank this and all these different watches would just be such a tip of the hat, you know, to people like me and to so many watch people. It's not just me. I mean, any real watch geek like Cartier or don't, their style recognizes their fabulous importance to this medium. So that's it. I like my brands like I like my people. You know, decisive, confident in their own style, and unwavering. And that is at the bedrock of Cartier. Cartier is like my brother who I know has a golden soul, but is kind of a douche. I don't have a brother, but I'm making this up. That's what Cartier is to me, but still I love him so damn much because I know what is at his core. So I do wish Cartier the best. I hope that you guys have come throughout this video to understand why I'm so passionate about this little French Swiss brand, because they really have earned and do deserve passion. They've done a lot to lose it, but at their core, they still do deserve it. Thank you guys so much for watching Ask TNH. Don't forget to check out the watches in the watch shop at theoandharris.com.